Sounds great. Welcome, everybody. I am Brendan Gilhooly with A-Team. I'd like to welcome Alex Bartholomew from People Stretch Solutions. Today, we are going to cover a fast start with OKRs. Alex, please, why don't you introduce yourself and appreciate you joining.
Yes, Alex Bartholomew, president of People Stretch Solutions. We're a management consulting firm focused on helping companies grow revenue and scale teams. OKR is at the heart of what we use to help drive success in both of those areas. And Brendan, with that, back to you. We're keeping it short and sweet.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'm Brendan Gilhooly, VP of Sales and Customer Success here at A-Team. Thank you. Many of you have downloaded our information in ebooks, and thank you for joining our webinar today. About A-Team, we exist to help connect and align everybody in organizations using our solutions built around the OKR methodology. We create alignment, connecting more people in the organization and really driving engagement through conversations, feedback, and recognition, and ultimately using the platform to have actionable reporting so that you're able to drill down and understand how everybody is performing throughout the organization, what the interdependencies are, and ultimately how you can execute better. So just in terms of our agenda today, Alex, please take us through.
Yeah, so I think one of the things as we prepared, Brendan and I did a webinar last month, and we got some feedback that people would have liked to have gotten a little bit more actionable advice, tips. And so what we want to do before we start is we want to make sure that everyone is submitting their questions in chat. We have a capable team supporting us. We've got Phil and Amber, and they're going to be writing the questions down. I want to give a special thank you to Vincent from California for already submitting 2 questions, which we'll get to. And I also want to thank Catalina from Romania, who also submitted a question for us before we started today. So they have kicked things off. If I could get everyone else to submit your questions. We understand that you're either thinking about starting an OKR journey, maybe you're just starting an OKR journey, or you know what, maybe you're midway in your OKR journey. Brendan and I are very passionate about OKRs. We have knowledge to share about them, and our goal is we want to understand where you are in your journey so we can give you valuable advice in the next 51 minutes. So that is our goal today, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver that for you. So let me get in straight to the People Stretch best practices. We'll wait for the screen here to render. So one of the things that we find when we work with companies in implementing OKRs, people read the book, they might go to Brendan's website, they might learn about OKRs through a different source, and they jump into the process of planning, and maybe they take a top-down approach, or they might even try to start at the very beginning with a bottom-up approach. What oftentimes is missing is OKR rationalization. And whether you're doing top-down or bottom-up, you must spend time sharing the objectives across the entire group of stakeholders who are actually going to be implementing the OKRs. We call that OKR rationalization. It can take a little bit of time based on the size of your company, but hopefully you can be nimble and practical and get through this aspect of the planning process. And I guarantee you, you will start to reduce friction for OKRs, especially when there's cross-departmental collaboration required. The second thing we talk about is keeping it simple. A lot of organizations want to have 4 or 5 objectives. I can make an argument that most organizations should start with 2 or 3. So why don't you start with 2 or 3? 3 is kind of limit. And also by keeping it simple, I think OKRs can be engineered for maximum performance, but in order to engineer the right OKR framework, you have to start simple and you have to start small. And what I mean by small is limiting the layers downward from a contributing objective to only one layer. So you have your top level and then you have one layer down. And a lot of times we'll talk a little bit more on the 4th bullet, as some of you with large organizations, when you do a phase 1, phase 2 rollout, you want to resist the urge from overcomplicating. So definitely wanted to highlight that for all of you on the call, because I think it's really a very important takeaway to not, eventually as you develop maturity, you can introduce complexity, but try to avoid it in the beginning. The 3rd bullet that a lot of times, Brendan will talk a little bit about task management, and OKRs are not about task management. From my perspective, they're about metrics. And our firm really focuses on driving superior white-collar performance and really all types of employee performance, but in particular in the white-collar world. We find that metrics, and we've actually tracked it so far in a number of clients, that the performance goal in some cases has been twice as high when metrics have been used as opposed to milestones. So certainly, depending on whether you're tracking your OKRs on paper versus in a great tool like A-Team, the challenge that anybody that uses a milestone, milestones are binary, metrics are very specific. And what I care about and what my firm is very passionate about is helping you reach your goals. So metrics make it easy to measure that. Milestones, sometimes the binary approach makes it very unforgiving. Final thing before I give it back to Brendan, change management. And a lot of companies that are small don't think they need change management. I would encourage you that regardless of your size, their change management should play a role in adopting the OKR framework. The important thing is you should think about the amount that you need relative to the size and complexity of your business. So if you're a small business, you need a small amount of change management. And as you grow, you should consider how you can leverage change management to increase the chance of tool and adoption success. So hopefully at this point, I'm spurring ideas, I'm spurring some questions. So hopefully we'll get to see that here shortly. The next thing I wanted to highlight is we'll call it our 5-step process to how to set an OKR. There's probably at least half of you, I'm guessing, have already set an OKR, maybe 3/4 of you. What we like to get people thinking about is first the why, and the why, we find that companies do a good job of thinking about the why. But do they translate that from the standpoint of, do you as a leader, do you have a sense of where the company needs to be at the end of the year? So it's June, you've either started OKRs, and let's just say you're on an annual fiscal, and right now you should be planning for the next quarter's OKRs. So do you have a vision of where the company needs to be by the end of the year? And then some key questions around what needs to be improved upon next quarter, and then what needs to be improved upon by the end of the year. And so those questions then help you set your 3rd quarter objectives. Once again, I'm saying 3rd quarter if you're working on a calendar fiscal. If you're on a different fiscal, I apologize, but my comment on 3rd quarter is for everyone that's on a calendar fiscal. You set the objectives, and this is a good question to help sanity check if you've set a good objectives. Can your leaders easily connect the objective to the vision? So if I've got some CEOs or presidents on the line, that's the question that you should be asking your leaders. If by any chance we have the project owner or project key stakeholder. That's the question that you should be given the executive stakeholder to ask everyone that's participating on the leadership team. Can they connect their objectives to the vision of the company, and can they connect their objectives to the highest level of objective? So a couple things. The final two steps are where we see a lot of sloppiness, and the people who want to start going to actually implement the objective and they want to get to the KR, there's a key step, how to reach the objective. So a KR is how to measure success. The KR isn't how to reach the objective. The how to reach objectives are tactics, and it can be tasks, but that resides in a plan. It does not reside in your OKRs. And a lot of times people confuse this. And I want to draw a distinction to that, is because people need to think about what needs to happen to reach the objective before they start thinking about the measurement. And then finally, the key results, are they measurable? Are they clear? And these are just important questions as you go through this 5-step process to really bring some sanity check, help each other out. A lot of times we find that if peer leaders work together and peer team heads a level down, and even peer frontline employees, getting peers to ask these questions of each other, that's a great way to create a great experience, almost a team building experience on having great OKRs. So that's my piece of the program. Now's a good time to start putting in your questions in chat. So please start feeding that into the system. And Brendan, I think you're ready to tell us a little bit about your passion around the OKR lifecycle. Why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate all those great points. Just for me, what I was taking away from that was to limit complexity, to link your strategy to execution, make sure that you have strong executive stakeholders and have the project leaders lined up to try and roll out the OKRs. And ultimately, what you want to be trying to do is ask those questions of why, what, and how. The why, being what is your strategy? What are you trying to accomplish? The what being your objective, and the how being your key results. And in terms of getting started, what Alex and I talked about in our presentation and brainstorming this was that's the on-ramp to the life cycle. To sit down and take your strategy and convert it into a few very concise, actionable objectives at the higher levels of the organization that more people, departments, teams, individuals can align up to. So in terms of the life cycle, we want to look at this as a quarterly life cycle where we're going to plan, track, and close and reflect, and then make it an iterative cycle so that you're learning from your experiences, you're growing, you are able over time to drill down further into the organization so that from a bottom-up perspective, more and more people are connected to those top level objectives. But that's,
Brendan,
as we're
I love what you've started. I know that before the webinar started, you were talking a little bit about CFRs, and I actually was talking to a client yesterday that completely whiffed on actually making the CFRs work. And so that's top of mind. So would you talk a little bit about the tracking your progress and really explain CFRs in the manner that Dor talked about them and measure what matters, just so our group really understands the power of conversations, feedback, and recognition?
Yeah, 100%. So once you've established your OKRs, in terms of tracking your progress, this is where we want to bring the human element into the OKR process. Conversations, feedback, and recognition. in your organization, the managers are the inflection point of really driving results. And you know, one of the things that I often say to organizations is, you know, in our conversations, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of analytics in companies, and people are tracking metrics all over. The absolute you know, key to it, and again, kind of focusing and getting a fast start, is to connect the right metrics and tracking those on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, but connecting those to the individual's work so that they understand what they need to deliver up to their departments or cross alignment within the organization. And the tracking happens by updating your metrics frequently, but then combining those with conversations, feedback, and recognition. When you're able to do this through the one-on-ones, the managers are able to coach and train in, you know, based on real results. You can address any performance challenges head on. You're encouraging more communications.
Let's go a little deeper, because I think one of the things that some of our clients on A-Team really appreciate with the millennial workforce, we have a multi-channel conversation with our workforce, especially millennials. So we might be communicating with them via email, via text, and now we have an opportunity to communicate them via a tool like A-Team. And so I think what's very important about what Brendan was talking about is that ongoing, it's a narrative. It's a narrative and a dialogue, not a monologue. Do not hide behind the digital feedback. Make the digital feedback extend and accelerate. So for example, Amber is an amazing analyst that just joined with us last month, and she's been doing great work. And so I'm able to first, when she does her weekly check-in, I can give her feedback on the great work that she's doing. And then in person, I'll actually give her specifics about why I thought she was actually doing good work. And so Amber is going to graduate from college, and that millennial workforce wants feedback quick, specific, early, and often. And so what that's helped us as a company, I'm 47, and frankly, up until we started learning how to use these digital tools to improve our engagement, I have to be honest with you, we struggled with it. And so we have since learned, and we're helping our clients really harness the power of the CFR, not just in concept, but in execution across email, text, in person, and your OKR tool. So hopefully that makes sense. And Brendan, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've heard, you know, one CEO mentioned to us that he felt like it was a third way to communicate. You have kind of, you know, formal communications via email. You'll have ad hoc communications. But what this allowed you to do was step back and just talk about, you know, progress. And because we're focused on metrics, you're having those ongoing conversations that will help. Not only from a top down providing the feedback, but from a bottom up saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, you know, in my role and in my responsibilities. These are the resources that I could use. These are my obstacles. This is the roadblocks that I've come across. So it becomes more of a conversation around execution. And again, getting back to you know, where we started, this is the human element of OKRs, because it increases those conversations.
Brendan, I think that'd be great if you can. I've got the lessons learned on the screen. Tell us about execution and what A-Team has learned being a thought leader in OKRs.
Well, these are the four biggest takeaways, you know, that we've seen from a customer success standpoint when we onboard a new customer, and they're at different stages of their maturity, but especially early stage companies who are tackling this may have just started to wrap their heads around OKRs. The number one thing is that's most important for rollout and adoption is focus. There's no question about it. And Alex mentioned, keep it simple from the start. Limit the number of OKRs that you have, and really make sure that those are connected to the strategy. So do fewer.
Absolutely, absolutely. This next one's big, Brendan. Tell us about outcomes versus output.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the outcomes versus output, this is not project management. We want to focus in on the output. We want to make sure that we have measurable results and that we are focused in on delivering outcomes. It's not tasks, and what we want to make sure that everybody takes away today, that the biggest mistake and friction and pain point is taskless. And again, kind of coupling this with the focus aspect of our lessons that we've learned, is this isn't everything that everybody does in the organization. This isn't about making an inventory of roles and responsibilities. It's about focusing people on moving the needle on a few highly leveraged outcomes that you're looking to deliver for the organization. So keep that in mind. Keep it at a high level and start so that everybody understands in a metric-driven way what they need to deliver.
On this next one, Brendan, you've got a great insight on cascading. Tell us more about when to cascade and who should be owning what KRs.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about teams. We want to focus in on teams versus individuals here, and at least at the beginning, have those a few key results at the team level that again link up to those high corporate levels that again speak directly to the strategy. This doesn't necessarily mean that you want to have like individual OKRs just yet. You might just own a key result off of a team objective. The manager might be of the team might be updating those key results on behalf of their team, at least for the first quarter or two, before they can start to have more and more people involved and distribute those key results ultimately closer to the area of execution, down closer to execution. But at first, there is the concept for team engagement in terms of the directly responsible individual, the DRI. And this kind of plays into alignment as well.
Before we go to alignment, let's stay on this one because I get a lot of questions recently around bottom up versus top down. So let's make sure when everybody leaves, they get a good sense of when is top down appropriate and when is bottom up appropriate. Because I know that I get asked the question all the time. Brendan, you've mentioned you get this question all the time.
Yep.
The right answer from my perspective is based on the level of complexity and the size of the group. So if you have a small group starting, it's possible with a smaller group that you could consider in the first phase, you could actually consider bottom up. Now, if you're a company of, let's say, 50 or 100 employees or more, and let's say the leadership team is starting as a proof of concept, then essentially the team is setting it for themselves and they're learning how to really become champions of OKR. And then in phase two, it's natural for them to push it down. But what's important, and this is what I want all of you to take away, is that in a three-phase rollout, phase one is the specific leadership team, phase two is more top-down, but phase three, make sure you let everybody know from the beginning. Phase three is when bottom-up starts. And it is critical to educate, coach, train, and enable your people to learn how to harness objectives and key results. And so reading a book, Measure What Matters, that's a good start. There's tools out there, but I really think it's very important that the leaders have to have some level of maturity before they ask their teams to have a certain level of maturity, and not having a clear roadmap of how to roll this out creates problems around team engagement. So that's what I have on team engagement. Brendan, let's go to alignment and tell us about your perspectives there.
Sure, absolutely. I think, a simple rule of thumb in terms of both engagement and alignment can be when you're getting started and you're on that on-ramp period, have the managers, leaders set the objectives. And getting back, Alex, to your concept of rationalization, the rationalization can simply mean that you're going to meet with the people who are going to execute against it to create the key results that will drive those objectives. So that can happen from level to level. That can happen at the top organizational level, department, team, down to individual. And from an alignment standpoint, just very specifically, there are many ways to create alignment, and it's really, especially in our platform, again, we want to focus on keeping it simple. I mean, number one, simply by writing down the objectives of the team, you're creating alignment. Everybody in the organization has transparency. They can see where what people's priorities are for that quarter or for that time period, and that is going to create greater alignment because that'll just naturally just bring up questions. You
Brendan,
are able to create. Yeah,
we've got a wonderful queue of questions teeing up. I think we will probably get a chance to talk more about alignment, answering some people's questions. So I'd love to be able to, if it's okay with you, Brendan, I'd love to be able to go to the questions and start answering them for everyone. Could we do that?
Yeah, absolutely, because the alignment is a key piece, and it's something that a lot of people do ask about. So let's see what questions come up. Did you see any that you wanted to focus on first?
Absolutely. I'm. You know what? It's only fair that Vincent from California, he was the first to submit, so we should start with his question. So Vincent asked, how do we properly record contributions to our own OKRs versus contributions towards others? So for starters, I'm not sure, Vincent, what you're using. Actually, could we, Phil, can you find Vincent? I actually have a couple questions for Vincent. My first answer, and Vincent, I'd love a follow-up from you, is the tool that you're using. So your contribution to an objective should be channeled through a key result. And depending on the software tool that you're using, you should be able to record that depending on how you set it up. That's my answer. But if we can unmute them, I'd love to see if you have a follow-up to that, just so I can make sure if that answered your question. Can we get Vincent on the line? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So while
one moment.
Great.
Okay, great. So Vincent, you'll be on and you'll get to ask a follow-up question. And then he had an alignment question. How do we properly align goals and contributions from one team to another? So let's see if Vincent can tell us we answered his first question, and then we'll answer his second one. Phil, we got him live? Okay, so while Phil works on getting him live, the way to properly align goals and contributions from one team to another.
Sorry, I just unmuted Vincent, so if he's ready.
Vincent, are you ready did we answer your question? Was that helpful in terms of how to record contributions toward your objectives versus someone else's? Is to do it through a KR? Did that answer your question? Okay, Vincent might be on mute, no worries. So the properly alignment of goals and contributions from one team to another, one of the things that we recommend is at least 1 or 2 program management meetings across leadership teams and mid-level management teams. So we can actually, as a collective group at each level, make sure that everyone feels like their efforts are being recognized and properly accounted for. You don't do this for the sake of credit. You do this to make sure that people know that you're helping, and they need to be aware that you're helping and you're doing your share. So what you can go and apply immediately is make sure that you have a leadership meeting looking at all the OKRs, and then you have a mid-level management to do the same thing, because in order to align, you have to leverage your OKR tool to create the visibility and the transparency, and that's the key to driving great results.
Yeah, and
Brendan,
I'll add to that. Yeah, in terms of going back to the DRI, the directly responsible individual. Now, whether this is recorded in a platform like A-Team, or you're doing it on spreadsheets or SharePoint, the concept is pretty much the same. It's about owning the metrics. That person can own the metrics, as a managerial level, and they will update on behalf of their team, or they can own it as an individual, as a contributor to the overall objective. So whoever it is that's going to be responsible for updating the objective really drives the alignment, updating the key result, updating the metrics.
Hey, Brendan, we've got Vincent.
They're really driving the alignment.
Vincent's on the phone. Vincent, can you chime in? Did we do a good job of answering your question, or do you have a follow-up? Okay.
Yeah, called in. Yeah, again,
Nope.
so just while we're waiting on Vincent. Vincent, you there?
Well,
yeah, that DRI, ultimately, they don't have to be responsible for doing the work. They just have to be responsible for updating the metric, for updating the key results.
Awesome.
Cool.
So while we wait for Vincent, if he can call in, the next question was from Catalina from Romania, and Catalina's company is one of the best software companies, application development, that nobody knows about. And they've aligned their OKR framework to Agile. And what's interesting about the model that she sent and shared with Brendan and I is that they're actually doing, as opposed to every quarter, they're doing it every 6 months. So the question, what do teams need to prepare before a planning meeting starts? Well, for starters, I mean, just for those of you on the call that work in Agile, I think you have to look at the sprints and what you accomplished from the last 3 months, or in Catalina, your case, the last 6 months. I think, in Agile, you have a product roadmap. For a company, you have a strategic plan. So the input data that people need when preparing to go to plan for the next OKR lifecycle has a lot to do with a strategic plan, last quarter's trends on how they performed against OKRs. And so in Agile, sprints produce points. You produce points across 6 sprints, 12 sprints. You do your retrospective, you review, rinse, and you repeat. And so a lot of the same information, but you're doing that at the organizational level, not necessarily in the case of Agile software development, you're doing that at the application development developer level. So great. Hopefully, Catalina, we answered your question. Bill,
I'll take this one, Rich, actually. Do you want me to take this question for Rich, the 3 most frequent mistakes? So Rich Maxwell, thank you, Maxwell Coaching. 3 most frequent mistakes when first implementing OKRs. John Doerr said it, the #1 thing is to have strong executive leadership and sure that you have identified who your champions in the organization are going to be. They're going to drive this forward. Number two is absolutely not having metric key results and mistaking key results with task lists is the biggest mistake that we see as a number two. And actually, as a number three, Alex, why don't you go into a little bit about taking some time for rationalization and how people make mistakes in terms of their prioritization.
Yes, so the mistake, there's rationalization and overall, so I'm going to say two things. So first, rationalization. And rationalization can be a 90-minute session, and I recommend a whiteboard, and I think it's important that you put everything on the whiteboard. You can either draw it or put stickies, and that process of getting teams putting their objectives on the whiteboard helps to deconflict. And because people don't spend time, I believe this is one of the most frequent mistakes, because they just don't spend time aligning and rationalizing and deconflicting their objectives. So that's number one. Number two is because people try to implement OKRs too quickly, the majority of the employees are ill-equipped and not enabled in order to be successful. So unknowingly, leaders are setting up their teams to fail because they're trying to move too quickly. That's the second most common mistake when implementing OKRs. It is great, they are powerful, but if you move too quickly, you're going to feel a lot of pain. The great analogy for everyone, so I run and I love running marathons. I don't recommend it for everybody, but when someone decides to apply OKRs, it's like asking someone that doesn't exercise to run a 10K race. Now, some of you might think, oh, I can do a 10K race. The average person to run 10 kilometers or 6.3 miles is a lot to ask for. And with a little bit of training, you can absolutely do a great job running 10K or 6.32 miles. But without any training, you could still do it, but you will suffer. OKRs are the same way. They're absolutely doable, but it does require a little bit of enablement. And so that enablement is the common number three mistake from my perspective.
Yeah, and I think this can flow right into the next question from Al. Hi, Al. When is the best time to implement a tool to manage OKRs? Before starting to write your first OKRs or after several quarters of experience writing and managing them? We see both. I'm going to turn this over to Alex, of course, but I'll have a quick overview. I might be a little bit biased. It is a successful way to roll out in conjunction with a tool because it consolidates the overall process. You have an automated one-to-one system that increases the communication. So we certainly have seen it work where people are starting from zero and rolling out their OKRs. Again, all of the best practices that we talk about would apply in either instance. Keep it simple, focus on what matters, no task lists, more metrics. So we have seen both work, but we're obviously partial to using a platform. Alex, you have a lot of experience working with people and talking to them before they even write their first OKR. Yes, so I have a strong opinion about this, and we see a lot of people trying to use tools like SharePoint, the spreadsheet. Before there was OKR software, there was the spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet met SharePoint, and then there was Google Docs. Those are all wonderful tools to collaborate. The challenge is it misses out on automating CFRs. So my analogy, if you're not automating CFRs, you're showing up to a gunfight with a knife.
And I just think that and once again, I don't sell software. I just try to help people use it as wisely as possible. So this isn't just a plug for A-Team. This is a plug for just looking at it. And you should start early and often, because we live in a digital age, that you should start digital first to make it easy for your team. So hopefully that's the answer there.
Cool. Copy, no problem. We'll follow up with that. That'll be available on A-Team website.
Metric versus milestones. So a milestone is, will we get the project done this quarter? So will project be successful? Yes, no, binary. A metric is, for example, someone in sales, and the focus, the objective for the quarter is new accounts. So what we want to know is, well, hey, the key result is, can they get 20 new accounts? Or for example, can the CFO reduce collections by an average time of 12 days down to 8 days? That is very specific. And when you set a metric, you can know exactly what percent to goal. And what Measure What Matters talks about, there's two philosophies of goal setting. I subscribe to both, and I see value in both. One is the stretch goal methodology. So when you're at goal, you're at 70%. And if you hit 100, it's because you've stretched for outstanding. So that's, John Doerr's a fan. If you watch his TED video, he tells about how the current CEO of Google, he stretched for amazing when he was leading Google Chrome. It's a great story. We'll email out the TED video. Everyone should watch it. But that just shows why a metric, it makes a big difference versus a milestone. Brendan, anything to add there before we go on to the next point?
No, just in the interest of time, I think you covered it. We're just about 12 minutes left and a few questions. So, let's keep it moving.
Are there specific attention points for OKRs in large projects? Yes, absolutely. So one, if we go back to, if I can just bear with me, I'm going to go back to our change management slide. And in our change management bullet point, we talked about a communication plan, a roadmap. A communication plan is really talking about why, what, how, all the information around it. The roadmap really shows the time period it takes place. And I talked about the training, the coaching, and the reinforcement. There's also something that we should be very open about. And a lot of times companies that want to implement OKRs, they struggle with accountability. And so if your organization struggles with accountability, you're going to run into some challenges that it will be very apparent because of the transparency, who is accomplishing their goals and who isn't. And so I think that's just something that you need to understand, that that is a unintended benefit consequence depending on which side of the accountability ledger you're on. But I think it's good because it holds everyone to a higher standard, and that leads to a better performance. Brendan, anything from your perspective on OKR and large projects?
I think, yeah, absolutely. In terms of the change management, you nailed everything there. Just in terms, for A-Team and actually implementing a solution to make that happen, it is about the planning. It is about increasing the communications between managers and their employees. But over time, again, we're going to take that concept of a directly responsible individual and move it farther down into the organization. So that when you have a larger organization, you'll want to start, more at the top. Again, this doesn't mean things can't be bottom up. You can set the objectives, have the directly responsible individuals define the key results on those objectives. But over time, quarter to quarter, those are going to go further down into the organization, driving those key results closer to the area of execution. Cool.
Great.
So how do you go for it? Yep, Raul.
So Raul's question: how do you combine the OKR proposal with the operations plan? So Raul, I think there's an important aspect of what your definition of an operations plan. So depending on what you define as your operations plan, from my perspective, I like to call OKRs a performance management tool. And what it does, it gets you focused on the strategic objectives and how we measure them. The operations plan is how you get there. And so that's the interplay between OKR framework, the objective, and the key result. And the operations plan is actually how you meet your key result. So hopefully that makes sense. Brendan, did you have anything to add there before we move to the next one?
Let's keep it moving.
Awesome.
Let me jump on this one. The question is.
I've got a strong opinion about this, but why don't you start and then I'll chime in.
Okay, I'll keep it quick. Can you use this platform for performance reviews? How is this different? So in terms of traditional performance reviews, one of the reasons why OKRs are so popular right now is that the annual performance review is a thing of the past. It's something that showed very little value in organizations and wasted a lot of time. So the idea with OKRs is to have a continuous process with ongoing conversations. You have the opportunity to connect at the end of the quarter to have a conversation about what you've delivered and what you're going to deliver for the next quarter. So it's an ongoing process that really keeps people aligned and focused. So that's how the A-team approaches the performance management aspect of it. Alex, take it away.
Now this is going to be great because we're going to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. So from our perspective, we think that OKRs make up one corner of the performance triangle. At the top of the triangle, if everybody can try to visualize a triangle, the top point of the triangle is the annual review. And the annual review, from my perspective, needs to be much shorter than it's ever been. It is a necessary evil. And I think by using good sense, organizations can reduce it down to a page. OKRs are one way of measuring performance. Another way of measuring performance is the feedback that everybody receives. And so if we look at three things, the annual review that a manager has to give an employee, hopefully twice a year, and if you can do it quarterly, even better. And OKRs are another source of data, as is the feedback that that employee gets from their peers and different employees. To me, that's a far richer data source in order to help someone perform better. So yes, OKRs are part of the equation, but I do not recommend using it as the platform of record for performance reviews. So that's just my quick opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Just one final word. I'll add on to that real quickly. We look at it like the I conversation and the we conversation. The I conversation is your relationship to the organization. That would be like your annual performance review. The we conversation are the OKRs. That's what we're trying to accomplish as a team, a department, as an organization, and how are we collectively going to deliver those results. Awesome.
Awesome. So question from Aaron, when you say not to move quickly, it is pertaining to aggressive goals or aggressively implementing OKRs. So this is a great question. My first response is the latter, but I also think depending on the culture, I think setting aggressive goals from the outset has to be very aligned with the culture. And so some cultures are high growth, and it would be very normal to start with aggressive goals. If it's not a normal aspect in your culture, then I think you have to start slow, and you slowly gain velocity quarter over quarter. So hopefully that helps. In the current slide, is there a reason for determining how to reach before how to measure? I'm really excited, Pierre. So Pierre Lundquist, really appreciate the question. I'm glad that you noticed. I actually think that that's interchangeable. I've worked with people who can think about how to measure the end point. So they're actually working backwards. And then I have some people who think forward, and they have to actually think how to get there. They actually have to visualize in their mind, and they have to go from step 1 to step 100. And when they get to step 100, then they'll know how to measure it. So a lot of that has to do with how your brain works, and there's not a right answer. I think the right answer is it depends on what works for the person and how do they think. Brendan, take the next one, please. And the question is, what are CFRs?
Absolutely. It's from John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters. He talks a lot about objectives and key results, but a good half of that book is about CFRs, conversations, feedback, and recognition. And this is, again, kind of having the human aspect of execution, driving conversations that focus on executions. And by using key results, by using objectives and key results, we can keep people focused on those highest priorities and have measurable ways of understanding that we are making progress towards those objectives. So the CFRs are the mechanism by which we communicate and drive towards those outcomes.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question. So Cam Barnes, I've got the slide, and then we'll have how to contact us here at the end. So Justin is finishing up strong with a tough question. So I'm going to read this. Justin from Hungry Harvest. Our senior staff is trying to figure out how to message and navigate OKR and performance reviews. In that, employees currently have metrics-based goals they're supposed to meet. I've indicated the KR is not what we can measure employee success off of, but their performance executing the initiatives is what we can review them off of. So what might be good, Phil, if you can figure out how to get Justin on the line, I'm trying to see where the question is, because what you're telling me what the problem is, but I'm not clear on the question. So Justin, I'm going to read it one more time, trying to figure how to message navigate OKRs and performance reviews. So I think there's a governance question, a fundamental governance question about the role that they play in performance reviews. And so it sounds like this wasn't well defined when the OKRs were rolled out. So this is a reason why a lot of organizations need to go slow so they can think through some of these unintended challenges that OKRs can create. So do we have Justin on the line so we can maybe get a little bit more background and or a specific question problem statement?
Yeah, I have added Justin. Moment.
Great. Justin, can you hear us?
I'm sending a mute request, so Justin needs to confirm, and he will be here, I believe.
Great. Awesome. So with that, while we wait for Justin, I'm going to go to our final slide. If you want to get a hold of Brendan and I, here's our respective emails. You've got Alex at peoplestretch.com and Brendan at ateam.com. Obviously, our goal today was to help you in your OKR journey. If there was anything that we didn't get to that you want to ask us a question, I encourage you strongly to reach out to either of us, and we'll be happy to jump on a call and answer your questions and figure out how we can help you have a better OKR journey. So Justin, are you on? Can you ask us a specific question so we can make sure you have a better journey?
Justin has muted himself, as I see by the panel.
You know what, Justin, no problem. So we tried. Let's see here. Do we have any more questions? Are there any specific metrics we can measure off of that? So Justin,
I think those are A and B. Yeah, off of that question. And I see that just that in conclusion, we have, it's 1:30 right now, so we're just going to wrap up. I see Justin's question as a question of compensation and what role, OKR should play in an employee's compensation. There is, a wide range of, opinions on that. That in some say you should divorce them entirely. We feel like at A-Team it's more like a Venn diagram. There's an overlap in terms of, what you're delivering for the organization and how that ties into your core overall compensation. So ultimately, it's about communication and making sure that people understand, how their efforts are being received. Are they positively driving the agenda for the organization, and is it being well received? And that can happen in those quarterly closeouts where we're closing objectives and resetting for the next quarter, and we can have a subjective conversation when we close and score the objectives, and then ultimately that can play into your overall compensation to inform those, as I said before, conversations.
Real quick, because I know we've gone over, and there's something important that I know we've got some people in HR here. So from an HR perspective, I think there's a perfect opportunity, Justin, for you to balance the performance review and the manager setting SMART goals. There are things that you can measure, and there are things that you can't measure. And we've all been in an annual review or a performance review where, unfortunately, the subjectivity is unavoidable. So it's redundant to measure things in a performance review when you can do that in OKRs. So use OKRs and key results specifically to measure things that are specific and measurable. Use the performance review on the subjective pieces and leave that as a means of doing that. So we've got a follow-up feedback. We have a company, okay, so we have a question from Aaron. Hold on one second. I want to answer. We have a company-wide performance management system with continuous feedback. An OKR system will be for a few people initially. Will we be duplicating some of the conversations? That's a great question. So one of the things I'll tell you is I think you want to run them concurrently and educate people. Feedback should be early and often. An OKR is about feedback should be unstructured. OKRs about structure. And I'd be happy to go offline and talk to you more about this, because I absolutely think you need both. I think it's awesome that you're doing a continuous feedback mechanism. And I think that that's actually one of the corners of the performance management triangle. So I just want to thank everybody for being on. We still have 32 people 3 minutes after, and that shows us that you appreciate us. And Brendan and I, we really appreciate the fact that you stayed on and hopefully found this to be valuable. That's all I have for this month. Brendan, do you want to sign off?
Yeah, Alex, just thank you very much for your participation and sharing your experiences. We appreciate it very greatly. You'll, if you would like to receive a copy, you can go to hello@ateam.com and we can send off a copy of this deck. This will also be available on A-Team under our resources. There's a webinar tab that you can see any of our past webinars. And of course, there's some additional resources here. But for me, really thank you on behalf of A-Team for joining today. And if you'd like to have a demo of the product, please feel free to reach out to me or hello@A-Team. If you'd like to talk about how you can link your strategy to execution, please reach out to Alex at People Stretch Solutions. Thank you all so much, and until next time, good OKRs to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.